Hey everybody, welcome back to Northernlion Plays The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus. What can I say? I'm a living legend in the Isaac community. Winning easy runs, having Doctor's Remote without even realizing it, which is actually called Broken Remote or Broken Joystick. RHVTX CC9. This is, it comes pretty close to an unlosable run. 3 HP, a defensive spacebar item, and good stats, like, let's be honest with one another. Right out of the gate, good stats. Who's complaining about 8 rate of fire and 4+ damage? Nobody. I mean, if you're complaining about that, here's the thing, brother. Let me tell you. You're in the wrong line of work. That's a good start. You go do your freaking Judas starts if you're so worried about your dang old damage, okay? Out here at NLLLC. Kind of hard being EGG, but I somehow, some way keep pumping out 4 to 5 new videos every day. May I? Okay, we're not gonna keep going there because there's only the thing about rap music is that there's cursing a lot of the time, and I'm a member of the anti-cuss union at my local parish, and no, obviously, I'm being very facetious in case it's not abundantly clear. I'm not afraid to say the F word. I'll do it right now. I'm very thankful for the food, mother. Didn't really work. I don't know if I've ever told this story. It's not a big one. It's not like a landmark bombshell. But I remember, I was hanging out with my friend, and my friend's mom was driving us somewhere. We were like 12 years old, and he said the S word, you know, like poop, but different. And then, great slogan, by the way. His mom got, like, madder than I've ever seen her get in my entire life. And then he said, so what? You know, I'm 13 years old. I guess we were 13 at the time. I can say that word if I want to. And she said, you can't say that word until you're 18. It stuck with me as a moment that I really like. The idea that when you turn 18, you know, you can be drafted. You can buy a lottery ticket. You can vote. And you also get the most important license of all, the ability to say curse words. I don't know. Curse words are weird. I waver back and forth, right? They are just words. And there's a difference, I think. Some words are designed to hurt, you know? And sometimes some of those are slurs, but you know. Or some of those are curses, I should say, but they kind of cross the line into slur territory. But, yeah, forget teleport. Let's get some extra flies here. You have to... I guess, like, here's the thing. If I hear a 6-year-old kid go, well... F. That doesn't bother me. If I hear a 6-year-old kid go, listen, you mother effer, give me back my juice box. All of a sudden, he's using those words, you know, to barb and to harm other people, and that's where it becomes a little bit more of a problem. We don't have to, you know what's weird is that, like, when it comes to the swear words in North America, well, I guess I should just say in English, the really offensive ones are not the ones that are actually usually pointed at a specific person. You know, the F word notwithstanding. What's the second worst one? Probably say the S word, right? That's maybe. I don't know what the other. I mean, I guess there's some that are a little bit more vulgar, related to anatomical parts, but you know, that one's just like it's another name for what comes out of your butthole. What am I talking about? Anyway, I'm just saying. Here's son of a bee. That's one that's offensive. But that one is really low tier as far as like the offensiveness of insults actually go in modern culture, right? Someone, you know, went, you son of a bee, you'd be like, haha, yeah, darn me. Frick you, buddy. That's actually like the most offensive. Someone goes, hey, you know, eat my ass. I'm just gonna stop, because I think we've gone, I don't think I'm actually saying anything at this point. I think it's like a grown man slowly losing his mind on camera. That's the danger of this run being so good. You might hear some sounds in the background by the way. Kate's playing Tetris 99. It's honestly the hottest and baddest battle royale of February. Apex Legends, eat your heart out, but also, you know, extremely good game in its own right. Don't forget about the fact that Apex Legends came out this month, but man, that Tetris has got its hooks in me. I can't deny it. Multiple second place finishes, just can't seem to get over the hump. That's okay. It's weird, by the way, so we've been on this, like, one Isaac a day for, you know, we're probably getting close to a week-ish at this point. It's very weird to finish recording 7 Isaac episodes, not in a single day, but total, and be like, yo, I'm set. Like, if my backlog hits 7 days, to get to 0, I have to not touch Isaac for a week. It's hard to explain. I mean, it might not be, depending on... And you might not even be interested, but it is my show, so I can talk about whatever I please. Thank you very much. You might understand, depending on what kind of job you have. If you have a job where, like, you know, a lot of files come in, you go through a lot of them a day, then you know... Maybe you got sort of a similar thing going on here. Like, man, I can't believe I've processed 20 files this week or something like that. I don't know. You work as a file processor? That's a real job, right? But previously, it used to be, you know, if I had a 7 video backlog in Isaac, you got to keep your foot on the gas pedal. Because if you take a day off, now you're down to 5. You take a day off, just from Isaac, to record other things or stream, you're down to 3. And if you get down to 1, that's not even enough to put up 2 on the next day, right? So, you know, I was kind of always under the gun, but 7 is very manageable. Yo, I am an idiot. I walked into that by accident. My mistake. So it's nice, and you know, some people, inevitably, anytime you make a programming change, especially after a long time, you know, people are gonna be on both sides of it, but I hope you're enjoying the variety, as well as the, you know, the continuation of Isaac. Always recommend, you know, at the end of the day, there's already, like, 3,000 episodes of Isaac on the channel, even discounting the Flash version. There's probably, I know you might be like, I'm only getting half as many new episodes. There's probably upwards of, you know, maybe hundreds that you haven't even seen. So they'll be new to you. And what can I say? Every single one is a timeless classic. You know, you don't need to watch it, except for the Java arc. You don't need to watch it, you know, in the moment of its conception to appreciate and understand it. Those are my 2 cents anyway. But it's been fun to play Civ, and I think you can tell if you haven't been watching the Civ videos. Maybe you're like, I'm burned out on Civ. I encourage you to do so. What do I bring to the table when it comes to Civilization? Absolutely nothing, except a good attitude and a lot of enthusiasm. And the bottomless well of pop culture knowledge when it comes to my own country and also my neighbors of Sweden and Scythia. Although, to be fair, not really that well versed in the whole the Scythian Empire. That's kind of like a period of history. You know, it's so far in the rearview mirror. I never even had like a course that touched on it. Most of my history classes in high school were basically. It was like, you know, 10,000 years ago, human beings invented agriculture, and then yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I mean, like, Mesopotamia existed, and they invented, like, cuneiform writing, but then following that, Rome, you know, is pretty much what it came down to in my high school level history classes. It was like, you know, there's the... Oh, now I'm trying to remember, I should say. What are the names of the river at the cradle of civilization? There's the Tigris and the... Oh, now, like, who knows, dude? That might be on the Jeopardy exam. Tigris... The Euphrates! That's right. The, you know, where they meet, it makes the cradle of civilization. Shouldn't say we learned nothing about the other civilizations there, because we did do a little bit on Greece. You know, we got to watch Troy. We did a little bit on Egypt. We watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade for that, which I don't believe actually has anything to do with Egypt in hindsight, but it was a nice little sidetrack for us. Vaguely historically related, I suppose. And then we did like a lot on Rome. Like a staggering amount of stuff on Rome. Anyway. Go watch it. If you don't, you're a coward. How does that sound? I knew it. Okay, deal with the angel. It means the odds of us getting a guppy deal have gone down. And I'm not super thrilled about getting Lazarus rags. You know, I kind of like... I said no to the deal with the devil because it wasn't that good. And then you're just going to hit me up with a pretty bad deal with the angel item as well. But we did get Death's Touch, so I'm not going to complain too much. Lots of stuff with latent future potential. If you think back to your high school career, if you're lucky enough to be past it, not that high school was, you know, terrible for me, but, you know, it's crazy to think back, like, on how time flattens. Like, for me, high school passed in the blink of an eye, but it didn't, you know? It took 4 years, and every year within that is composed of, you know, 12 months. Each month had its own character. Sometimes each day had its own character. But when I look back, I don't see that. What I see is high school. You know, time compresses like that. And I think as you get older, it changes even more. Instead of like, you know, this 4-year period, now you're just like, my childhood. You know, that like 14-year period of my childhood. But what I was gonna ask is, if you think back, what class in your high school education do you think did you the greatest disservice? Not in terms of like miseducating you or something, but in terms of like wasted potential. I'm trying to think. It's kind of a, you know, it's a potentially dangerous question to ask. I think a lot of people would probably say math. You know, why am I spending my time in... And I know, you know, depending on where you go to school, you might not have quote-unquote math class. You know, in 9th grade you might have algebra, then, you know, algebra 2, trigonometry. By the way, if you're American, I'm going to teach you a little life hack. Nobody else in any part of the world knows what you're talking about when you say those things. I mean, we know what algebra is, but, you know, when I go like, you know, well, you know, 10th grade math, and they go, what's 10th grade math? All I have is algebra 2. We don't get that exported. I don't know what algebra 2 is. I don't know what algebra 1 is. You know, I understand that you guys have a relatively standardized curriculum, but, you know, you gotta, before you talk to somebody, you just go, where are you from? Preferably add a buddy in front of it. Buddy, where are you from? And then they'll go like, you know, something stupid like Canada. And then you go, ah, okay, now I know how to talk to this guy. In my country... No, okay, we're not going to do that. But, I understand the idea. You know, in math, you do learn a lot of stuff that is practical, but you also learn a lot of stuff that is hard to apply to your average everyday life. You know, some of the stuff, like, I really think learning stuff like the slope of a line, like how to calculate the slope of a line, actually does factor into, like, well, maybe not everyday life, but relatively common life. Like, you know, it's not too often you're gonna be, like, you know, on trial or something like that, and the judge is gonna be like, hey, well, buddy, all right, you know, the lawyer's got one question for you. If you answer it right, you get off scot-free. And they're like, okay, quick, here's a line. Find what's the m value of the slope of the line? You know, it's unlikely. But, you know, being able to conceptualize, you know, if you saw two things on a graph, what value is getting larger faster? When will they meet? You know, stuff like that's important for, you know, finances, business, break-even points. You know, your costs start high, your income starts low. Eventually, there should come a point, you know, based on your current performance, where your income will pass your costs and then hopefully continue growing past that. Do you have enough capital to make it 6 months to where it seems like your break-even point is? Or do you have a marketing plan to sell enough units to get to where your break-even point, etc., etc.? You know, I'm not trying to... Yeah, I took a marketing class once. But I do think it's relatively relevant. But there's also a lot of stuff. I was talking about it a couple episodes ago, like trigonometry, sure. But I don't think math class is a fair example. The one I always go to is... and by the way, if you talk bad about gym, we have a difference of opinion. I was not a gym rat in high school. I consistently got like 80s in gym and resented that people were getting 90s just because they had a better, you know, essentially God-given ability in gym class. Like, I was trying my heart out, but... You know, I wasn't on any of the sports teams. I pretty much, you know, just like a pudgy 13, 14-year-old. But, you know, if a gym class is done right, and ours was done relatively well, It shouldn't just teach you how to run. It should teach you how to keep the body that you're going to have for your entire life in shape and the importance of doing so. You know, that's stuff that's actually aggressively relevant. Should be, at least. And I've held that opinion even before I started working out and became, you know, the next Mr. Olympia, hopefully. But the one I always go to is geography. Because I still, to this day, I'm a 30-year-old man. I don't know even what the study of geography is. Geography was a mandatory class in 9th grade in Ontario, where I grew up. Our teacher was hired to be the coach of our relatively well-respected local volleyball team. But you can't just be like, I guess there's like rules here or legislation or something that you can't just hire private coaches for public schools, you know? So they got to be teachers that actually do the extracurricular stuff, so they put them on geography. And, it, you know, I mean, I don't have anything necessarily bad to say about him as a human being. I'm pretty sure my man did not know what he was doing. So I distinctly remember that, like, we gave it the college try for like a few weeks. Then it was a lot of like, hey, read these 10 pages of the textbook while I sit at the front of the class and read a magazine. And then by the end of the class, we were just watching movies like vaguely related to weather. Like we watched Dante's Peak, the movie about the volcano. Not to be confused with Volcano, the other movie about the volcano. We watched Pearl Harbor, which, I mean, if you watch it in a history... It's not a good movie, but if you watch it in a history class, I understand. But if you watch it in a... I mean, geography, it just doesn't make sense, except I guess it's a world war. I mean, then by the end, you know, our school didn't have that many VHS tapes, right? So we watched Dumb and Dumber, which we had for some reason at the school. And there was just really no rhyme or reason to why we watched that one. They take a road trip, I guess. But simultaneously, like, you know, afterwards, he asked us questions about the movie as if it was relevant. You know, it was like, you know, where do they take a road trip to? What brand was the suitcase that Mary Swanson had? Samsonite. I was way off. Don't get me wrong, by the way, good movie. But not really relevant to geography at large. So I remember, like, we learned what the capitals of the provinces and territories in Canada are, which is information that we already knew because we've been learning it, you know, our entire scholastic career. Whoops. Please give me enough. I was gonna say give me enough money to buy something, but we're on the final floor here. The final floor for shops anyway. So still to this day, I have no idea what geography is. Something to do with the topography and the study of also natural resources and, you know, weather phenomenon and stuff like that. But I really just... I don't think my graduating class produced too many geography majors and geography professionals later in life. Let me just put it that way. I could be wrong. Maybe for some people it was their favorite class. It's definitely the easiest class. Guardian Angel, man. I mean, I'm not upset. It's still a pretty great run. But I could use a little bit of je ne sais quoi, you know, a little extra chutzpah. Get us in there. Let me hydrate here as we head down. Where was I going with this? I'm interested to hear what other people think. I also think, you know, science is a really weird thing to teach. It's a hard thing to teach in high school versus in college, university. It's like, if you're not in... Like, if you're in high school and you're like, I love science, that's cool. But you don't do that much science in your average high school curriculum. As much as that sounds like, I don't know, gatekeeping or something. I don't mean it like that. You're going to do a couple dissections. You're going to do some chemistry labs. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of your time is, you know, sitting in a classroom and your teacher being like, you know, this is what evolution is. And you're like, oh, write it down and then regurgitate it on a test. In college and university, depending on what you take, you end up doing like a lot of lab work. It's strikingly different. I wouldn't say I was under the impression that that's not what it was, but when I went to university, I was like, I want to take biology because I like biology. I think at the end of the day, it's not that I dislike biology. What I dislike is doing lab work. What I like is sitting down in a lecture hall and being talked to by somebody who is, you know, more of an expert than I am, and learning cool things. I liked learning about biology. When it came time to, you know, when I got face to face with the real, actual methodology of science, and they were like, you know, hey, micropipette, you know, 3 drops of this solution into this to denature the DNA, and then you put it in one of these things and toss it in the centrifuge, and it separates everything by density, and then blah, blah, blah. You know, there was still some joy to it. I don't want to make it sound like it's such a, you know, boring thing, but I was like, oh, yeah, this isn't really what I thought I was getting into. And it's nobody's fault but my own anyway, but, you know, I don't feel like my education was wasted either. You know, it granted me a lot of things, including, you know, a respect for the scientific method, a healthy skepticism, and also, you know, some soft laboratory skills that I will hopefully never have to apply in the future. But, you know, at the end of the day, the actual, like, art, the act of doing science, I didn't find that enjoyable. Reading about it afterward, like, whenever you'd be like, hey, well, you know, when we did X experiment, you know, Y value increased. They'd be like, hey, Ryan, why do you think that could be? And I could come up with, myriad hypotheses. But when it came time to be like, hey, let's clean the test tubes in the Erlenmeyer flasks, I was nowhere to be found. That's not true, I cleaned up. I just wanted to make myself sound worse. Anyway, I think it's a good topic. We were also, I don't think this class served me badly, but I took a lot of music in high school. And I feel the plight of a music teacher, you know? How do you explain to your students that are not intending on becoming like career musicians that it's important to take the class and thus save your job? You got a room full of 14-year-olds. You go, okay, how do you convince these guys to take music as an elective? I don't know, it's hard. I always feel like you have to be a little bit dishonest with those. Like, one of the things that annoys me is, you know, every time I took a history class in high school, and I like history, but every time I took a history class in high school, you'd always have, like, a little bit of a unit that's like, why is history important? And I'm like, you guys don't need to be that defensive. How about, because, you know, it's the story of human civilization. You know, it's interesting, for one, but it's also, you know, it's basically the story of how, you know, we got to where we are right now. Sitting in this classroom. Don't hit me. You son of a gun! I needed that. Deal with the devil chance drastically. Why, so you can get another Lazarus rag? You know what? Valid point. We're probably gonna be fine. And you'd regurgitate it on the exam. You know, I wrote it. If those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it in the future. Is there any proof of that? I mean, you can cherry pick examples of it, but you're telling me, oh, like, you know, when Hitler did Operation Barbarossa, he wasn't aware of the fact that Napoleon also lost a war in Russia in the wintertime? Like, I mean, I can't say for certain, but I'm guessing he was probably aware of it, given the fact that he lived like a country over and, you know, was a world leader. But I could be wrong, I suppose. I just think that's kind of a manufactured answer. Like, show me the proof of that statement. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. A lot of the stuff that happens in history is essentially just, I mean, I don't want to say it's a dice roll, but it's a confluence of things happening with simultaneity that you basically could never fathom happening again. You know, it's just to say that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it is, in my opinion, an oversimplification. But I also understand that if you're a high school history teacher and, you know, people are like, why should I learn this? I'm just going to work at my dad's machine shop. And you're like, well, you know, Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Now let's learn about how the pyramids were built. And you're like, what? Doesn't really seem applicable. Anyway. You know, let me tell you, all those people who didn't continue with non-mandatory history classes in my high school, let me tell you, they all became dukes of duchies in northern France, and wouldn't you know it, every single one of them ended up recreating the Battle of Hastings. Crossed the English Channel, won a 3-way melee for the crown, and then, you know, the rest is history, ironically enough. Well, that's not what they meant. What do they mean? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, I'm just interested in people's thoughts on that subject. We've talked way too much about this in the past. You already know my opinions, you know? Yes, NL, we know your galaxy brain opinion that gym class should be mandatory. It's not that I want to produce super soldiers, it's just that I think it's important to instill, you know, the idea that you should take care of yourself as best as you conceivably can with respect to your faculties, not just for your own well-being, but also for the economic well-being of a nation that provides healthcare for its citizens. I'm not saying it's your duty to do it. At the end of the day, you know, I got my own stuff to worry about. I'm not really worried about, you know, auditing everybody who walks into the hospital and be like, oh, is this guy worth the taxpayer dollars? You know? It's not really like that. What did we get? Oh, we must have gotten Beelzebub. I'm willing to give it a try. I'm just saying. I could have done with that instead of that mandatory geography class. I also think, like, I mean, I went to a school that was really, like, the school is fine, but it was bare bones in terms of the classes that it offered. Partially hamstrung by two things. One is a low population. You know, there's 80 people in my graduating class. Not really a lot of opportunity to offer, you know, 8 different second languages, right? And the other thing is a very cosmopolitan backdrop of people who went there. Some of the people who went there came from extremely blue-collar families. Some of them were like me. They were turbo nerds. They were, you know, from the suburbs. And were like, wood shop? Father would never let me touch his saw, you know? So they, you know, they did the best with what they could. But I also, if you're pushing me and shoving me and push comes to shove, I would love to see English split into 2 classes. One where you know, read classic literature and develop, you know, a literary eye for it, while also taking in some good stories, and one that's specifically designed around, like, functional written and oral communication for a professional context. You know, one class is like, hey, we're gonna read, you know, A Streetcar Named Desire, we're gonna read some Shakespeare, you know, I don't know, maybe we'll go see Hamilton or something like that, something to keep the kids engaged, right? But then the other one would be like a little bit more focus on, hey, here's how you tell a story, you know? Here's how, like, in the moment, we're going to give you a space to have some practice telling a story. There's nothing like listening to somebody tell you, you know, about something that happened to them, and they have no idea how to tell a story. It's very frustrating for both parties. You know, there's all these asides and, well, you know, Billy did this. Billy, by the way, is Jennifer's cousin. You never met Jennifer, but, you know, like, we went to ballet class together 14 years ago. Anyway, the point, you know, you got to hook them with a little bit of the line of the storytelling early, and then you take a sidetrack, and then you come back and, you know, pull on the hook at the end. Anyway, I do think they're both, if not important, at least worthwhile. I will say that English class does teach a very strange skill of predominantly reading a book and then writing a 5-paragraph essay about said book. I wonder when that became the norm. What's English class? It's basically you read you know, Tennessee Williams, and then you write a 5-paragraph essay about who the real villain is, or, you know, what does Blanche Dubois represent in the American context of the 1950s. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. If you did, click the like button. That was a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. See ya!